of impropriety that all too often come along with having to herd prostitutes like so many sheep on a daily basis. But the sergeant does not believe in police matrons and refuses to hire them. If it were not for the fact they need so much typing done and cannot do it themselves, there would be no women employed at our precinct at all. The typewriter is indeed my passport into a world otherwise barred to me and my kind. Typing is not a brutish, masculinizing sort of work, mind you. In fact, one might even go so far as to argue that the work of a typist, the simple act of taking dictation, the crisp dance of fingertips with their dainty staccato over the shorthand keys, is perhaps one of the most civilized forms of work our modern world has to offer. And they needn't worry about the rest of it. A good typist knows her place. She is simply happy, as a woman, to be paid a reasonable income. In any case, if typing were truly a masculine activity, you would see more men doing it, and of course you don't. It is always women one sees typing, so it only follows that it must be an activity more suited to them. I have, in all my time, only met one male typist, and that particular gentleman's delicate constitution was even lesser equipped than my own for working in a police precinct. I should have known from the first he would not stay long. He had the nervous carriage of a small bird, and his mustache looked as though it was trimmed daily by a barber. He wore a pair of very well-kept white spats over his shoes. On his second day, a criminal expectorated a large stream of tobacco juice on them. The male typist, I'm sorry to report, turned very pale and excused himself to go to the lavatory. He only stayed one more week after that. White spats, the sergeant had remarked, shaking his head. The sergeant's clucking is often his manner of confiding in me. White spats have no place here, he said, and I knew he was probably glad to be rid of such a dandy. Of course, I did not point out to the sergeant that the lieutenant detective also wears white spats. The lieutenant detective and the sergeant are two very different sorts of men, but they appear to have long ago struck an uneasy alliance. It has always been my distinct impression that I am not to outwardly tip my favor in the direction of either man, lest it upset the tenuous balance that allows for their cooperation. But if I am being honest, I will tell you I feel more at ease around the sergeant. He is older and perhaps a little fonder of me than a married man ought to be, but I feel it is a fatherly sort of fondness and that he became a police sergeant in the first place because he is a righteous man and he honestly believes it is his mission to uphold the proper order of our great city. Moreover, the sergeant likes all things to keep proper order and takes great pride in following all rules to the letter. Just last month he suspended one of the officers, sentencing the man to a whole week without pay, because the officer had given a homeless waif who was waiting in the holding cell a ham sandwich. I could see why maybe the officer did it. The vagabond was such a sad spectacle, the outline of his ribs whispered indiscreetly against the thin cloth of his shirt, and his eyes rolled like haunted marbles caught in two deep, dark sockets. No one accused the sergeant of being unchristian, but I believe he could tell some of the other men were thinking it. Feeding such a man only sends the message that there is no profit in hard work and following the rules, and we can't afford to bankrupt these ideas, the sergeant reminded us. The lieutenant detective outranks the sergeant, but you would never know it. While he can certainly intimidate others at will, the sergeant is not a tall man, although he is large in other ways. The great bulk of his weight sits around his waist, just over the rim of his uniform trousers, giving him a reassuringly paternal paunch. His handlebar mustache has taken on a sprinkling of salt and pepper in recent years. He wears it curled and also lets his sideburns grow long, which is no longer in keeping with the latest fashion, but the sergeant cares little for changing fashions, and he does not go in at all for the newest shocking ones. Once, while he was reading a newspaper, I heard him idly remark that today's modern fashions are proof of our nation's degeneration. By way of contrast, the lieutenant detective has no mustache and keeps his face clean-shaven, which happens to be rather in fashion these days. Also in fashion is the haphazard style with which he combs his hair back using hair cream. Almost always, a lock or two comes loose and falls quavering over one eye, only to have him run a hand through his hair and push it back up. On his forehead is a sizable